Get ready to RPG!
RPG! RPG! RPG! RPG!
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Knights of Last Call. My name is Derek Melinda, welcoming you back to another Knights of the Last Call. But it's just me. It feels like I haven't been on in a long time, but yet I was on a long time ago, or was it Monday morning, so Sunday night, but I'm back. So welcome, everybody. Today, we are going to be knocking out a tip goal from a couple weeks ago where we were doing a first look, and we had a tip goal of doing another bonus first look, and that tip goal was reached, and it was predominantly generated from Mr. Benisaro. And he wanted me to take a look at the Ultraviolet Grasslands. So today, that is what we're going to be doing. I have almost zero exposure to this game. I'm aware of it, obviously. It was kind of floating around the zeitgeist of the RPG maelstrom, I would say, the last 5 or 6 years. But I don't really particularly know the game that well. So it'll be interesting to take a look. And, of course, as we go into this, it is a first look, which means it is not a review. I have not played this game. I've not gotten it to the table. I'm not as a player or a GM. So I may be missing very important, very subtle things that may flavor my opinion of the game. This is merely my first reaction, first cut, off the top of my head. So don't take anything I say here too seriously. That being said, we've looked at a lot of RPGs here, and we'll be trying to answer the big 3 questions, which is going to be, what is this RPG about? How does this RPG go about that? What are the reward mechanisms in place to encourage us to engage with the game? But it's I also think we're going to add a 4th bonus question here, which I think is going to be relevant as we look at certain game systems, which is this an RPG or is this a self-indulgent art project? Maybe it's both. And the reason I bring that up is because this certainly falls into one of those categories of games that, from my understanding of it, potentially could also be viewed as, someone just trying to, it's the classic Z bash you thing where it says like, you have been fooled into just reading someone's microfiction. So, sometimes it's microfiction, sometimes it's an art project. But ultimately, I think we have to ask ourselves that question, because this is something that I don't know much about the game. But one of the things I do know about the game is that it is very stylistic. Let's say that. And the question is, really, is it style over substance? I have no problem with a visually compelling game. I think it can go overboard to the point where the readability and usability of the game suffers. But at the end of the day, this is supposed to be a game. And so in my personal opinion, that should take precedence. That should be paramount. So is this style over substance? Now, Ben is in the chat only for a few moments because he does have a Blade Runner game to run. I apologize, Ben. But he does say, I feel seen, and I don't think that's the case there, even though there is a very strong visual aesthetic. So we will keep that in mind as we dive into this. Again, we'll wait a couple of minutes, probably till about 7:05, 7:06, just to get some people in here before we go ahead and start diving in. As a reminder, you can go ahead and if you haven't done so already, you can go head over to twitch.tv/Knights of Last Call. Give us a follow there if you haven't already. I believe tonight is stream number 7 since we have become a Twitch channel, which means this should be the stream that gets us to affiliate status, which will be really great. And we'll be able to take some subscriptions over there on Twitch. Important to keep this channel in the black as opposed to the red. And additionally, we have 2 goals tonight. The super chat goal, $60. And if we get $60 to super chats, we'll do another first look on Thursday. First looks tend to be fairly polarizing. Some people love them, some people dislike them. But we'll let the chat and the wallets decide tonight if we do it. And normally we don't do back-to-back first looks, but it has been a while since we've done first looks, and I know some people really, really, really like them. So if the super chats are there, we'll do a another first look on Thursday, probably Mythic Bastionland. And then if we reach our tip goal of $60, this is just a new idea. I'm playing around with different ideas, is what I'm calling a retro review. And this would be going back and looking at like an old module. You know, I'm talking B2, Keep on the Borderlands, B4, Lost City from Tom Oldvay, that kind of stuff. Old D&D adventures, maybe even some older non-D&D adventures, but probably principally and predominantly D&D. And going through it. And like, you know, these adventures are not particularly long. Most of them are under 30 pages, 40 pages. And kind of looking at what made them classics and, you know, how they compare to modern adventures. So I just threw that out there as a potential optional thing, and maybe we'll get some clout on that, or some some interest in that. If not, no big deal. Alrighty, well, let's go ahead and let's get started. Ultraviolet Grasslands. Now, a couple of things are of note here. This is Ultraviolet Grasslands and the Black City 2nd edition, which came out circa 2022. All right. Now, this is the quote-unquote current version of the game. This is the free-to-play version of the game, which is, I think, produced back in 2018, 2019. So, not that I'm against going through the full book, but I do want to make sure that we cover the basic elements of the game. And the table of contents has me a little bit scared because the first 160 pages appears to be not the game, but instead locations. So I don't actually know where the game elements of this are, which is why I was kind of like, maybe I should go through this first just to kind of at least kind of get the high level overview. And then maybe we can go ahead and dig into some of these locations in the actual game as well. But this like none of this is actually a game so far. There's rules here for caravans. Rules here for stuff and gears. Player sheets. I just don't see where you make a character. So just to indulge me here, we'll start here with the the free player guide. And again, if somebody wants to correct me or guide me, I'm more than okay with that. All right, so we've got here the edge of the world. A world begins when it emerges from the mist of time. So it is with civilizations of the Rainbow Lands, which mark the count from when the long ago ended and the now began. So this already sounds kind of self-indulgent, but it is what it is. This looks familiar. What does this look like? Does this look like what is that Blades in the Dark? That Blades in the Dark one that's like, no, it's not the Wild Sea. It's Grim. Is it Grim Hollow? Grim Hollow, I think, was kind of, what's the name of the stupid game? That's a 5e game. Grim Tooth? Nope, that's not it. We covered it on this channel. Oh goodness, maybe it's not Grim. Grim Wilds. It is Grim. Okay, Grim. It's crazy at this point. Like it's like Wild Sea, Grim Wild. I swear to God, it's like it's getting out of hand here. Anyways, I think Grim Wild has a very similar like look for the way that their game was designed. So yeah, we've got the Mountains of the Moon. So this is apparently the defined city or the defined setting of the game, which is interesting to say the least. Okay, so we've got a lot of micro fiction here with a lot of like, so generic. Erica says the Traveler section is the game, I believe. Pages 2 and 3 is character traits. Page 4 is the system. Okay. Well, then I will stick to this here. So we start here. Obviously, there's a lot of art. Given, you know, and let's not mince words here. Where in the hell is it? Okay, maybe it's in the players. Maybe it's in the free guide. I just want to be very clear here. Here we go. Okay, welcome. This is from the quick start. The Ultraviolet Grasslands is a rules-light RPG point crawl module inspired by psychedelic heavy metal, which is not my cup of tea, the Dying Earth genre, which is also not my cup of tea, and the Oregon Trail games. I didn't realize there were multiple Oregon Trail games. I thought there was just one. It takes a group of heroes, quotations, into the depths of a vast and mythic steppe filled with the detritus of time and space and fuzzy rifts. The UVG is for referees, game masters, judges, players, and fans of role-playing games who want to run a month-long science fantasy Marco Polo style voyage across a weird old world. Now remember, one of the first rules is this game actually about something? Is this trying to stake a claim? Well, months-long science fantasy Marco Polo voyage across a weird old world is about as, you know, surgical as you can get with this game is about something. The UVG is also for any gamer who wants to mine it for inspiration, adventuring locations, odd characters, maps, items, and random encounters, aka you can use it as a grab bag. The UVG is also an art book, knitting together my art and maps and writing. Yes, every nut and fault, from layout to Lamarckian monstrosity, is my own work. It is dedicated to the genre of heavy metal, which gave me sonic worlds to explore at difficult times, to the Google Plus RPG community, talk about dating yourself, which inspired me to return to art, to the Hydra Cooperative, encouraged me to take art seriously, to Skirples for the editing advice that made this version possible, and finally to all of my heroic patrons at the Strato Meta ship who keep putting their money where their mouth is with their support of UVG. So, this was back in 2019. So, okay, so we get it. So, less of an RPG system. It does say rules light. And it's more of a point crawl module inspired by psychedelic heavy metal, Dying Earth and Oregon Trail. All right, fair enough. So let's get into it here. So again, for contents, we've got, looks like 4 pages on the rules of the game. And then we have many pages of what appears to be different point crawl locations. And they are hyperlinked, which is cool. Then we get into the Caravan. This must be the Marco Polo part of the game. Looks like ultimately you are, you know, truly going on a caravan quest, okay? Including vehicles and mounts and the stuff that you'll need. A few pages on spells, a few pages on the Bestiary, information about the setting, I guess outside of the point crawl locations, a glossary, and lastly a hero sheet and a caravan sheet. Well, before we get into it, let's take a look at the hero sheet. All right, here we go. This is the player character sheet. Hero of the Ultraviolet Grasslands. We've got our portrait, our name, our friends, our enemies, our likes, a species, our looks, our debt, our level, our experience, our defense, our life, our save, our hero dice. Are we skilled, expert, or master? We've got strength, constitution, dexterity, charisma, wisdom, intelligence, slightly different names. Our melee, our ranged, our old tech, and our psyche magic. We've got traits, items, burdens, and then we can also have a pet, which apparently is a big deal because it's got a pretty substantial size on a one-page character sheet. And then we have our cash. 2,500 euro is apparently 100 soaps, which is 10 stones, which is 1 sack. I mean, fundamentally, it looks like an interesting character sheet. I mean, obviously it's 6 stats. I'm kind of interested how these traits work. It says it's 7 plus your thought. The items you can carry is 7 plus your strength. So I guess this is, you get 7 plus whatever your thought bonus is. So this is the different things here. And burdens are penalty to all rolls, and it keeps building up. So maybe as you gain burdens, you become worse and worse and worse. And it looks like it's a pretty simple thing here. D20 plus strength plus skill level is your melee bonus. So to that end, it looks pretty simplistic. All right. Well, let's take a look at what we got here. Well, we start off with the Traveler. Who is this hero? Oh, it's a D50 roll. We are well off to the weird and wonderful, aren't we? Oh, I forgot to put up my green screen. All right. All right. Who is this hero? Roll 1d50, and we have a very long table. And then we have why are they on the road, and what do they bear? So let's right away. And again, this is not necessarily a criticism, and I don't want it to appear as such. However, sometimes people make things difficult just to make things difficult. Nobody has a D50, right? So, we already know that. So why put this here? It's it's being different for the sake of being different. It's obviously going to be a D100 divided by 2. And so why not, if you wanted more than 20 lists of things, which is totally fair. I think 20 is not enough if you're talking about doing this here. So just make it a D100 and either put in 100 things or make it, 1 to 2, 2 to 3, or 1 to 2, 2 to 1 to 3. Well, oh my God, 1 to 2, 3 to 4, 5 to 6, 7 to 8, et cetera, et cetera. This is just unnecessarily. I know it seems like I'm picking on this particular element, but it is kind of silly to really start off with this. All right, so I'm just going to pick some random numbers here. We're going to be 23. So who are we? We are a wine vampire priest. And why are we on the road? We are bearing a priceless pearl for a princess. And what do we bear? A crystal personality box to create Ka zombies. So we can already tell that this game is weird and doesn't really probably put too much focus or emphasis on balance. Looks like it's more about just creating really weird, strange characters in a very strange, weird, psychedelic world and, going off. Very Aeon Fluxy is kind of my vibe from the game. All right. Do they need a name? Yes, no, maybe. So we got a list of names, but of course you could also make up your names. But we have high names, vulgar names, yellow names, red names, DWARF names, time loss names. Do they need another quirk? So this looks like a D. So it looks like there's 9 tables. I guess you just pick a table and then go roll on it, I guess. So, or maybe if you want one of these each, you get to roll on them each time. It's not really sure, and the game doesn't really seem to explain anything, so that's cool. But let's just say I have a biomantic omen. Ooh. I have a chromorphic map on my skin. And I also have a magic butler who knows many domestic magics. So, yeah. Okay. So we are a wine vampire bearing a pearl for a princess who is crossing. We have a map, a chromorphic map, maybe etched or tattooed, or it's like a living birthmark on our skin. We are joined by our magic butler, and we are attempting to cross the ultraviolet grasslands to bear this princess for a pearl, but we also have with us a crystal personality box that can create Ka zombies, but maybe we keep that to ourselves. Okay. Getting the important stuff out of the way first. Again, I don't know if we get to roll on all of these or if just whichever ones we want, or do we roll randomly to see which ones we roll on? It's not quite sure to me. So now is as good of time as any, not that we need to, but now is as good a time as any, and we will continue to see pieces as we go through the thing. That may change my initial opinion. So far, I like the pieces of art. I like the larger pieces of art. I like the sort of more geography, or I said landscape pieces of art. Like, I like this piece of art. But I am not as big of a fan with these character portraits. This is just not. This seems just messy to me and amateur-y in its own way. It's just my style, of being like this. This feels like a sketch that I would, draw in a bullet journal if I was even remotely artistic. Now, again, there is art. There's no right or wrong. It's just whether you like it or not. But I can tell you that this style of art here is not really for me. I wouldn't say that I particularly love this piece here of this girl with the violet hair either. But again, the landscapes I think are kind of interesting. The landscapes feel very psychedelic to me. They feel very adventure timey to me. I could be, maybe I'm off by that impression, but it feels very adventure timey to me. The cartoon. All right, so this is the 6-fold system. The Traveler is a PC in the best tradition of role playing. Now, see. Again, what does that mean? I'm not joking. What does that mean? I get that they wrote it, but what does that mean? It doesn't mean anything. You're just putting something in to put it in for vibes, right? Style, perhaps, over substance, but we'll see. All right. So when we try to do something risky, we roll D20 plus ability plus skill and try to beat a target number. 3, trivial, which is we only roll for relevant for critical failures, which is a nat 1. 7, 11, 15, and 19. Okay, so we go by 4s. 3, 7, 11, 15, 19. Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment. We basically, those are the DCs in the game. That's fine. Advantage and disadvantage. The referee assigns a relevant bonus or penalty when circumstances favor or hinder a character. +1 or -1, a tiny advantage or disadvantage. +6 or -6, a rather large advantage or disadvantage. +1d6, -1d6, a pretty random advantage or disadvantage. Roll 2 dice and take the better or worse, also possible. So basically, do whatever you want. If you're coming from a 5e, just probably use when people say advantage and disadvantage, that means roll 2d20, take high, take low. But you could also basically, it's kind of saying, you can do whatever you want. Yeah, very vibe. Yeah, very, very vibe-based ruling as well. Level, an abstract measure of power. They start at 1 and go to 9. Okay. Life, the narrative resilience of a character, exactly like HP, but fuzzier. When life hits 0, a character is in deep trouble. So this is a great example of writing 3 sentences and telling us almost exactly nothing. Right? So, okay, it's the narrative. Now, keep in mind, we're Knights of Last Call here, right? We've done this a million times. So we've even talked about how HP is really more of a abstract meta currency, right? It's a plot armor meta currency, really. So when we see the narrative resilience of a character, that kind of actually makes sense to me, because that is kind of what HP is. But to anybody else, that's a nonsense statement. Then, exactly like HP, you're like, cool. You're like, but fuzzier. How could you be more fuzzy than what HP already is? And then it says, when life hits 0, you are dying, you are dead. Nope, it is, a character is in deep trouble. And I agree with Ilya, who says, I think what it means is HP is whatever you want it to be at the time. And I tend to agree with that as well. 6 abilities range from 0 to 5, like modifiers in 3D6 style games. A first level PC assigns 7 points to their starting abilities: strength, endurance, agility, charisma, aura, thought. So again, you're referencing that this is basically like D&D. You're using 0 to 5 modifiers, which is 10 to 20, right? From normal D&D game. You have 6 of them. Strength and charisma are literally copies. So why not just make this constitution? Why not make this dexterity? Why not make this wisdom? Why not make this intelligence? I mean, I'm not saying like you have to change these or that it's some mortal sin that you didn't go with them, but it's like if you're going to reference D&D and then clearly use D&D style things, I don't know why you would change them. Other than to be different. Like I could almost buy the aura being different than wisdom, perhaps. Right? The power of your soul, your ka, your psychic fortitude. Okay. I mean, psychic fortitude to me does feel like wisdom saving throws, wisdom bonuses to will saves, etc. But Lance says, but it spells sea cat, which apparently someone else had said earlier. I read that like that's like the name of the system. All right. Skills. What one is good at? Applies when it makes sense. Yes. Now again, here's the thing. For me, in a certain style of game, that I'm cool with that. Like when does it apply? When it makes sense. When we all go, yeah, it makes sense. It could be a job like historian, bricklayer, priest, or something more narrow like sleight of hand or melee combat. Or something weird, project management or golem whispering. A 0th level character has 2 skills. If you're skilled, you get a +3. If you're an expert, you get a +6. And if you're a master, +9. So this is D20 plus stat plus proficiency bonus. So nothing we haven't seen before. Saves when nothing but blind luck might apply. Roll D20 plus ability over 13 to avoid doom or a nasty rash. Okay. Defense when a PC does not want to get hit, like ascending. Defense when a PC does not want to get hit. It's like ascending AC. Actually, it is AC. And it's 10 plus your dex, your agility, plus your armor. So basically D&D. Rounds, a cinematically suitable amount of time to take an action. Initiative, roll initiative every round for each side. A random PC rolls for the group every round. The side that rolls highest goes first. If there's a tie, chaos reigns and everything happens at once. It's D6 plus agility. Well, I like that because, when I play exactly, George. That's what we did in DTX. That's exactly right. So, to be fair, Lance, that is, I'm taking that from older versions of D&D. Where you roll D6, the first side that goes first. The side that rolls lower goes second, and then if you roll the same time, it's chaos and pandemonium because everybody goes at the same time. Action. Usually a character moves and does a thing. Common sense applies. I have thoughts. We'll get to this in a second. Attack. When you want to hit an opponent. D20 plus strength plus skill is melee. D20 plus agility plus skill is ranged. And old tech and psychic magic is D20 plus thought. Now here, wait. Why wouldn't you just put this onto 2? Why wouldn't this be 4 lines? Like, why not say melee, range, old tech is D20 plus thought, and psychomagic is D20 plus charisma plus skill? It's just a very strange choice to me that one they chose to put in the same line. Damage. Reduces a target's life. At 0 life, it becomes an X target. Most sentient targets do not want to be X targets and flee earlier. So again, we're using clever double entendre meanings here, and we're trying to be really artsy and like look how funny it. Like, oh, you're an X target because you're dead. Yes, so dead. Exactly. But instead of saying that and being like a normal person, they have to say an X target. And of course, most people don't want to be X targets, so they flee earlier. Well, again, this is not a review. It's a first look. And also, I am unique of my opinion. This is uniquely my opinion. Inventory. For every trait or item beyond their limit, a PC suffers -1 to their all rolls. Okay. Items. Stones, and stone-sized objects, which is 7 plus your strength. So you can carry up to 7 plus your strength items for no problem. But if you have more than that, you get a -1 to each roll for each item. Okay. But traits are skills, mutations, and innate powers. And you have a limit there. And if you get more than that, you get a -1 to all the rolls. I actually really like this system. I love the idea of a trait inventory. I think that's really cool. I don't necessarily know that that means that you're necessarily swapping these things in and out, but the idea that this is sort of a hard limit to your mutations and weird innate powers that you gain as a character is really, really cool. Smith never finished it, but when he was originally doing Northern Reach Season 3, we always really liked to give people cool powers and abilities in our Pathfinder 2 games, but it would always get out of control because you get too many of them and they'd start stacking up and then, whatever. But if you could create, like when you do it as an inventory system, which is what he was going to do, that there was a limit to the number of these weird, cool, powerful mutations and abilities and stuff like that you could have. I think that's really cool. Trait inventory feels very Disco Elysium. I've heard a lot of people talk about Disco Elysium. The name sounds crazy. What is Disco Elysium about? A Disco Elysium follows a troubled detective waking up from a hangover with no memory of who he is or of the world around him. Sounds horrible. Like life, Magitech and Infantascience. Life fuels spells, bodies, spirits, and memories, are consumed by the alien fires of magic. Characters pay 2 life per level of the spell cast. So Fireball costs 6 life. Okay, so I'm definitely getting some Egyptian vibes here. Hero dice, D6 for modifying rolls and regaining life. Each PC gains 1 per session and every couple of hours. Can store hit dice equal to their level. Can store hero dice equal to their level. Mr. Squid says, it's the best game ever made. You would hate it. That seems probably reasonable. So again, we already have a term in D&D, and everyone playing this game will be familiar with the term HD, meaning hit dice. And that's true whether if you're an old school player and you're used to hit dice meaning how many hit points you roll for your hit points, or if you're a 5e player and you're used to hit dice meaning things that you can spend during a short rest to regain life. And in this case, they kind of do that, sort of. I mean, you can regain life with your HD, but they call them hero dice. I don't know if I love this or hate this. It kind of reminds me of Fabula Ultima, right? How he calls them, it's called mind points, not mana points, but that way you can abbreviate it MP. And it's just because it also applies to things that aren't magical, right? Like even like a sword master's, blade fury ability costs MP because it's mind points. It's, your mental discipline, but it's really just MP and everyone's going to call it MP. Anyways, experience, carousing, waste 1d6 times 100, I guess euro, or more to gain that amount of XP. Roll charisma on the carousing table for any side effects. Exploring, gain 1d6 times 10 XP for braving dangers to see something new. Quests, 1d6 times 100 XP per session of progress towards a goal. Referee's discretion, as is tradition. Okay, so what is this game about? Well, this game is about going on psychedelic, heavy metal, Marco Polo style adventures, combining the best elements of the Dying Earth genre, Oregon Trail, and psychedelic heavy rock. How do we do it? By basically playing a super, super stripped down of D&D 5th edition. And how do we advance? Well, we waste our money carousing. We explore new things and risk danger to do it. We go on quests and make progress towards our goal. And sometimes the referee will just give us XP. So there's a little bit of, hand waviness here. Here's our levels and how much XP we need. Basically doubles. In fact, sometimes it more than doubles, which you know me, I'm a fan of that. But of course, the XP table doesn't advance. Unless, of course, you spend a ton of money. But like exploring and going on quests seem like that's pretty static. I mean, it's random, but it's static. So it looks like your XP will really slow down. You gain 4 additional points of life every level, all the way up to 9th level. Add up 99,000, basically 100K XP. Again, that's an interesting choice, right? Look at this. We can see that there's this double plus an additional 500. So like it goes 0, 300, double plus 50, 750, double 1,500, double 3,000, double 6,000, double plus 500, 12,500, double to 2,500, double to 50,000. Why not double to 100,000? Why is that 9,000? Why is that 9,999? Why is that 99,999? Why isn't it just 100,000? I know. It's like, Derek, why do you focus on stuff like this? Because it bugs me. I guess level 999999999. Yeah, maybe. I don't know. Yeah, right. It would roll over. You know what? That's literally Platinum is probably what it is. Why are the numbers left aligned? Looks nicer. Every level, a PC gains one of the following: a new skill or improves an existing skill. So skilled, remember that's +3, becomes expert, becomes +6, master becomes +9. Or you gain a new innate power or mutation, or you bump up an ability score by 1. And that's it. That is the entire game system. That's it. That's your whole character. Well, thanks for joining us. I'll see you next time on Knights of Last Call. I'll see you guys, everybody. All right, take care. Okay, I'm just kidding. Yeah. I mean, obviously we have other stuff to go into, like the world and the point crawl system and the caravan system. But as far as the system goes, this is about as simple as it gets. I mean, it's basically super hacked down D&D, right? You have basic scale of DCs. You have advantage and disadvantage, although you could just use random dice. You have hit points. You have 6 ability scores. You have an armor class. You kind of have this random save thing, which is basically just like an old school saving throws. Yeah, I mean, it's pretty basic. Let's take a look. It's always interesting. We got 12 viewers on the Twitch, and we have 43 viewers on YouTube. You know, it is interesting. I got to say, Thursday night, where we did a late stream, which was about like why, you know, can PF2 make dungeons? And it was like middle of the night. It was like 2 or 3 in the morning on a Thursday night for me. And we ended up getting like 140 people live in stream. And so I don't know if it was because of the time, maybe later is better, but also, or if it was just because it had PF2 in the title and people clicked in because it said PF2. I don't know. I messed up really bad. And that was, I should have done better A/B testing, right? Like I should do a stream, like a normal stream, but do it at like, you know, midnight or 1 a.m. and see how it does. And then do a PF2 stream at 7 p.m. Oh, Ben, we know that. Of course we know that. All right. So that is the whole system. My thoughts on the system before we get into the point crawl element. I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's basic D&D. I like basic D&D. I like the skilled system goes up like in significant chunks. Like if I leveled up and took something from +3 to +6, I mean, that's fine. That's nice. Basic in system, I like you get experience points for carousing, explore, which basically means you mean money and blow it and waste it. For exploring and going on quests, that's cool. I like that you can use your hero dice. You can either use them to modify your rolls or you can use them to regain hit points. That's kind of a cool, interesting choice. Spells cost life, so it's not, you know, something free to cost. I like this. I like the inventory system, both for items and traits. And yeah. So overall, it's fine. Wine vampire is just a euphemism. I've never heard of that before. Wine vampire. Is it? I don't think so. I'm assuming in the ultraviolet grasslands, it's probably literal though. Yes, I'm assuming I need to drink wine to like live. Like I can't, like I don't, I'm imagining I don't subsist off of anything other than wine. Like food doesn't do it, water doesn't do it, blood doesn't do it. I need wine. That's what I assumed. Yes, exactly. A vampire that literally lives off of wine. That's what I assume. Like in a pinch, if I'm desperate, right, I can maybe drink some like grape juice, right, or maybe some hard like a hard cider. But you know, mostly I just need the fruit of the vine. So again, here is a more these chapter titles of a landscape, and I like a lot more. I don't like, you can see this is clearly the caravan system going off into some unexplored weird wilderness, and I think is more interesting to me. All right. Here we have a bunch of mumbo jumbo. Again, I like this piece of art on the left. You know, a world begins when it emerges from the mists of time. So it is with the civilizations of the Rainbow Lands, which mark their count when the long ago ended and the now began. The Rainbow Landers are the human of a later era, undisputed master of the fertile lands around the Circle Sea, dwellers in the eye of creation. They come in many shapes, colors, creeds, and faiths. They pile unkempt technology and misremembered lore together into a teetering hole. They rule the settled lands under their polychrome deities of ill repute. This story is not theirs. This story begins at the edge of their world, at the left end of the right road, at the westernmost outpost of humanity, the Violet City. Bastion against the hordes, entrepot to the exotic sunset lands, and last port of civilization before the trackless steppe studded with the detritus of the long ago, the last glimmer of the rainbow before the skin-blistering glow of the ultraviolet grasslands. So, Shadram made me laugh in the middle of that because he said someone got a thesaurus for Christmas. So again, I mean, obviously, right, the idea here is that we kind of have essentially a Western Marches approach here, which is you have a civilized land, and through this civilized land runs a mighty road, the right road, and we are all the way at the left end of it, aka the western end of it. And here we are at the westernmost outpost of humanity, the Violet City, right? So we're all the way over to the left of this civilized region. And because it's called the Rainbow Lands, if you imagine the Rainbow Lands, you have, you know, well, from, I guess, which my right is your left? Okay, so you have, like, you know, probably the red lands, the orange lands, the yellow lands, the green lands, the blue lands, the indigo lands, and then here at the very edge of the civilization are the violet lands, including the Violet City. And of course, in the electromagnetic spectrum, what is beyond violet? Ultraviolet. So I suppose if we went the other way and we went past the red, we would get to the infrared lands. Maybe that's a sequel that he's planning on making, the infrared lands. Or instead of the ultraviolet grasslands, I guess they would be what? Maybe like the infrared mountains or something. We'd have to pick something. But anyways. And we are journeying to the Black City. Got it. Okay. Legend. Destination and chapter reference. So anything in a purple, violet circle with a number in it with a big font, that is a destination and also a chapter. The trail between destinations in weeks, that's the travel time. A small circle is a terrain feature. Draw discoveries, routes, and travel times as you play. Use unfilled diamonds to list time in days. Split distances with intersection pins. Draw on the map. Expand it. Make it your own. Okay. So here is the map of the ultraviolet grasslands. So it's a long ass map. So here is the Circle C with the needle of the world. Indeed, to the north is the Emerald City. Okay, so it's one short day in the Emerald City. One short day full of so much to do. We have the Decapolis. Looks like there's 10 cities here, and it looks like it goes around to the Red Land District. And then here at the Red Wine Hills. And then here at the western edge of the Rainbow Lands is the Violet City. And we can start to see that you have this sort of point crawl matrix through these terrain elements. The purple elements. Good night, Ben. The purple diamonds represent the number of weeks of travel. So, when we set off from the Violet City, we can basically choose to go to the steppe of the Lime Nomads, or we can go to the Low Road and the High, and these have chapter references. We start in the Violet City. And then we proceed down to the Potsherd Crater, the Porcelain Citadel, the Trail of Vomish Dreams, the Last Serai, the Death-Facing Passage. Again, we can see all the times and stamps here and the week's travel. And finally, after traveling through many, 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 many weeks of the Ultraviolet Grasslands, we arrive at the Black City and the Wine Dark Ocean. Well, I have the free player's guide. But this is kind of old, So I don't know how out of date this is. But this might be kind of old, so I don't know. All right. So what follows then is a series of... Oh, the one you're looking at has much more info. Okay. Maybe it does. I don't know. Let me see. I just downloaded whatever they told me to download. Maybe this. Try this. All right, this is the player's guide. All right, so we got the same thing here. Who is this hero? All right. Oh, look at this. Back in the day when this was made, which is a little bit older, this is only a D40. We've expanded it now to a D50. Good night, Rule of Cool. All right. The Ultraviolet Grasslands are big. They're weird, sure, but foremost, they are mind-bogglingly big, vast, and empty. Yeah, I have no idea what that is, Thaddeus. I wonder what that even is. Oh, that's from 2024. Weird. I mean, this is what's available on Drive-Thru-RPG. Is it like a different game entirely? Because what you sent me does not look like anything like what they had here. Anyways, sorry. This is just a really weird game that kind of doesn't do anything. Anyways, so the game is this point crawl where you go through these different things here. Each of these locations, there's like 28 of them. They have information about where you can travel to from that location. There's a random encounter table that you can roll on. There's a random weather table and potential misfortune table that could go to you. Side quest and different quests and different side quests. And a carousing table when you go carousing. And a lot of microfiction and art. Just so much microfiction and art. A bunch of weird stuff. A bunch of drugs that you can do. Shocking. I would never have believed that drugs were involved in the making of this game. And then that repeats for every location throughout the course of that point crawl map. So again, here is this is the next location. For example, the low, road, and high. It has what options you can do for traveling. What are some of the encounters that you might have in and around that area? What are the weather and misfortune tables like for each location? What are some discoveries that you can find? How much experience points are they worth? Very minimal information here. Like, for example, the sealed gate is 3 days outside of the low road and the high road. A cratered arch gate in the onion and skull style of the later mahogany rain. I feel like this is what would happen if I asked ChatGPT to just generate for me drug-addled nonsense. Like, hold on a sec here. Create a brief description of the sealed gate location. Use weird psychedelic terms and odd language and strangeness. All right, let's sealed gate, a throbbing hinge in reality, rusted shut by the time thoughts of those who came before. The stone of the gate is slick with dreaming colors, pulsing in rhythm, whispering backward songs in languages no longer known. Geometry fractures here. Angles bite and curves leer at you jealously. Something on the other side presses close, humming with sour anticipation. Its presence like a headache in your soul. The air is thick with the taste of forgotten oaths. You shouldn't knock, but it wants you to. That was ChatGPT creating this. Anyways, instead, we have a cratered arch gate in the onion and skull style of the later mahogany rain, slowly emerging from its aerolith tomb. Sages say it was entombed by an epic application of Zrakrolmat's air becomes stone in the year of the 7 wars. The petrified bones of strange beasts continually emerge from the light, fluffy stone of the area, heavily covered in graffiti. Risk of artist dilettantes, level 2 annoying, and the occasional meta skeleton, level 4 recombinatorial and adaptable. Ayla says, if you told me you read that, that's the new thing. Is this from Ultraviolet Grasslands or is this random gibberish from ChatGPT? You decide. And another piece of art. Norris Respector says, artist dilettantes, level 2, annoying. And again, this repeats again and again. Here is the step of the lime nomads. Travel options, misfortune table, encounter table, and random discoveries and areas and things that you can go mess with and poke around with. And, you know, just barely enough information here for a GM to throw some stuff together. You know, such as the Cryptic of the Crackler Queen, the Verdigris Ribs, the Great Biomechanical Baobab. Famed in the tales of the Green Tangerine Clan, this biomechanical tree is an unbelievable sight that dominates the plain. Must be this thing. It secretes natural oils that lubricate machines and cure aching joints. They say an artificial dryad, a level 4 lovely plastic monster, resides in the great tree's slow brain, dreaming of the awakened ecosphere. I don't know who this appeals to, but it's not me. And it's also worth exactly 120. In a world where we're talking about wire and bone biomechanical fish, we also need to make sure that we know that each is worth 1d10 times 100. And now, again, I'm not necessarily saying that, like, this to me, like, I'm willing to bet. I don't know. I don't know. But I'm willing to bet that this art was drawn first, and then we just make up stuff about it, and then we put this together, and then we say, well, I guess we should throw the vaguest framework of an RPG system onto this, and, you know, slap it on the back and call it a good one. Like, you know, do I believe that this art was drawn first, and then the Porcelain Citadel got created, and all this stuff got filled in later? Yes, and that's fine. I mean, this is an art project. This is like an art house RPG product. And I think a lot of people really, really love that. For example, there's an entire group of people who love Morkborg, and I do not like Morkborg at all. I will also say that Norm's respecter, I mean, he mentions the Dying Earth genre. And the Dying Earth genre basically means Jack Vance, and I do not like the Jack Vance novels. Science fantasy is a very strange vibe for me, and it's one of the reasons why I never got really into the Cypher system originally, because the Cypher system meant Numenera, and Numenera, in its way, is science fantasy. So I agree, this would be probably very good for Numenera in that way. There's certain elements of the game that really, I think, look cool. Like the map and the idea of this sort of structured point crawl experience with a fairly definitive end that might take an unknown number of months of play, but nothing like this is a campaign that has an actual literal ending point. And I really like that, actually. I love that it's a journey from the Violet City at the edge of the Rainbow Lands through the Ultraviolet Grasslands, taking different paths and exploring different little bits and pieces as you make your way across the 30 some locations, and finally end up in the Black City. And I think that's really cool. So I do really, really, really think that premise is interesting. As for all these different locations, yeah, I mean, you could probably mine this for some inspiration, but it's so weirdly out there. I don't know, how much use you're going to get out of this unless you're running some sort of very strange, very high concept type game, which again is fine, but not necessarily my preferred type of game, And again, most of the book, most of the 260 pages of the book, 4 pages of the book were dedicated to making your character. 200 and some pages of this are all dedicated to all these different locations that you may encounter on your way across the Ultraviolet Grasslands. And I think my guess, if I had to guess, is they become increasingly weirder and increasingly more sci-fi and increasingly more, way out there as we get further and further and further into these deep, crazy, weird lands. And so on and so forth. So the vast majority of this book, I mean, hundreds of pages, or it's many, many dozens of pages, is dedicated to the grassland locations of stuff. And it's the same template over and over and over and over and over and over again, with a lot of weird tables and a lot of weird locations that you may go and visit. And, so on and so on and so forth, over and over and over again. There's the Forest of Meat that was mentioned earlier. Long ago, somebody somewhere thought it would be a great idea if easily harvested protein grew on trees. Animals would no longer be slaughtered for their life-giving flesh. Packaging and delivery would be simple. Whole industries and cultures could be disrupted, and innovation would create a thriving new proteinomic class. Then somebody, probably a mad druid, thought exploiting trees for their meat was cruel and gave them teeth, claws, and venom-laced root lances. If it sounds like the Forest of Meat is a bad place to be, you might be right. The carnibotanic disaster zone of the Forest of Meat creeps up on the traveler slowly. The trees grow thicker and fleshier. Leaves begin to leer. Man, that was something that's like straight out of the thing. Straight out of the ChatGPT. Birds fall silent. Shrubberies click thorns like teeth. Soil runs red with slime. Mushroom eyes open in sudden clearings, and by night, howls of willow wolves echo across drinking bogs. Yeah. So, like I said, I mean, this is, for me, this is very, if you ever grew up watching, Aeon Flux on MTV or Adventure Time, like it's the same kind of, stuff. It's very fluffy, more about ideas and vibes than anything else. And finally, we reached the Black City. No spoiler alert. I don't want to spoil it for anybody, although it is in the book, so I guess it's fine. Looks like there's some time travel involved, potentially. All right. The Caravan. So the Caravan is a group character for the players, a joint mobile base of operations. So the idea is that you are part of a caravan that is crossing the grasslands from the Violet City to the Black City. You don't need a caravan to travel the grasslands, but it's a good idea. You can use the caravan sheet provided at the end of the book or draw your own. So let's take a look at the caravan sheet. So this is our caravan sheet. We got our motto, our cash, our debt. All right, we're back to playing mortgages in space, baby, except now it's mortgages in the ultraviolet grassland. Look, this highlights whether we're talking about Traveler or some weird, indie art project. Everyone loves a good mortgage and debt. We can list out our beasts, our vehicles, and then we have a whole set of cargo sheets. And the routes that we're running. All right. Money. Cash is the currency of the UVG. It's called cash as a nod to the ancient Chinese cash and the whole Marco Polo meta theme. An unskilled, I guess it's not euro. I guess it's just called cash. An unskilled laborer earns 1 cash per day. Lower denominations exist, but can generally be ignored. Letters of credit made out by private butcher banks are also available. Outfitting a caravan is expensive. The PC should start with a loan of 1,000 cash per character. The financier is dubious, and there's a 100% annual interest, but it beats scrabbling for pennies. Caravans rack up weekly expenses from wages, food, and more. Don't worry about precision. An approximate track of ready cash depleting suffices. A patron is your financier, your logo. Every adventuring trading company needs a cheesy logo. When the players decide to change it later, it costs 1d6 times 100 in random fees. Assets tracks your investments in trade routes and other shenanigans. Time, besides money, is the only other key constraint on caravans. Travel is impossible in the winter, and the heat is oppressive in summer. Have the players give each year a memorable name. Speed, fresh horses, fast, fresh horses, and slow tags, heavy weapons cancel each other out. The speed score represents additional tallies, days, added to the time track, or tallies from the misfortune and exploration that are negated. If the caravan travels slowly and cautiously, they tally an extra 7 days every week, but have bonuses on their travel tests. However, they do have to roll twice, so there's that. Consumption, how many supplies the caravan consumes each week. For simplicity, humans consume a sack of supplies each week. Herbivore mounts subsist by grazing and foraging, but consume a sack of supplies each week in the wastelands. Vehicles burn a sack of fuel per week. Magical creatures require no supplies. The PCs, the helpers, such as navigators, cooks, mechanics, guards, hunters. And then we have our inventory system. Treasure is heavy. If the heroes come across a series of beautiful crystal sculptures with diamond eyes, why do they hack out just the eyes? Space. Anytime a treasure or item is described with fancy words, add a sack to its size for every relevant words. Add sacks for heavy materials, fine workmanship, intricate mechanics, cyclopean architecture, just pile it on. The fabulous gold and marble statue of the metaphysical insinuation of being by Jirda the Artiste Geek is worth 6,000 cash and thus takes 6 sacks of inventory to transport safely. Oh, good grief. A smart hero can hack out 1d6 plus level percent of a treasure's value in one turn, but this will reduce the amount of the rest of the work by 10 times that amount in percent. So you can, they got hacking up your treasure rules. What is this? Night's last call? Time. What is time? A week is the basic travel unit. But we also will use days, particularly if we take short rests to recover expended abilities or D4 life, roughly exploring a point of interest, observing a new creature, mucking about a destination, and crucially, dying of thirst. Our caravans can be slowed down. We have to take a week off if we want to do a full rest, which gives us back all of our life points. Oh, we require one of the following. All of our life points, one of our stats gets restored or from one harmful effect, such as death, soul removal, and so on. So apparently if we die, we have to take a long rest for a week. Misfortune. Every time we travel for a week, we roll on the misfortune table. And I remember each of those areas had their own misfortune table, but here's a general misfortune table. We also get modifiers depending on our caravan circumstances. For example, if we took every precaution, we're blessed by the local god analogs, we get a +4 bonus. But if we're woefully unprepared, if we're lost, we get a -4 penalty. Here we go. The character can spend 1 point of charisma to re-roll their misfortune. The concept of charisma comes from ancient Greek, where it referred to grace and bestowed by capricious deities. This wasn't some approximation of sex appeal or leadership potential. This was straight-up divine favoritism. A hero could be a complete dirtbag, but her divine mother had dipped her in god juju and given her Teflon skin. Others got the plague, she was untouched. Others got scarred, she glowed with beauty and grace. Classical charisma is utterly unfair, which is why it works so well as a proxy for luck. Blah, blah, blah. This is what charisma really means. So you can spend your charisma to re-roll your misfortune. Okay. Destinations are the main nodes on the map. Discoveries are all those little sub-areas that we found around them. Discoveries are how you earn XP. The players should have a map of the Ultraviolet Grasslands. It will help them imagine how far they were going and what they can discover. Encourage them to write and take notes on the map. This is a group asset. It is also an inventory item and should be carried by a character. What if it all goes wrong? How not to starve. Cannibalize the expedition. Forage for supplies. Oh, they don't. They literally mean that. This is the fastest way to get supplies. A human provides 1 sack of supplies. An ordinary pack animal provides 2 sacks of supplies. Okay, nice. Forage for supplies or buy more supplies. Some inhabitants frown on cannibalism. When you're out of supplies, bad things can happen. Out of air after 3 minutes, coma and death. Out of water, after 3 days without water, most are in severe distress. After 7 days, they'll be dead or dying. Out of food, after 3 weeks, most humans will be weak and sick. After 7 weeks without food, most will be dead or dying. It's helpful with this to think of the rule of 3 and 7. After 3 units of time, a human's in bad shape. After 7, it's probably finished. Source code corruption. They didn't necessarily encourage it. They just simply provided some idea of rules for it. Source is the creative essence of the world, sometimes called the world soul. Some creatures manipulate it to exceed the parameters of their physical structure or to do magic. When it goes wrong after vomish manipulation, drinking glowing water, or trying amateur auto upgrade magic, things get icky. Roll page 200 for more varieties of biomagical corruption. And here's a corruption table. Bunny error is one of the larger ones that you can have here. Creature becomes, roll d4, bunny-headed, bunny-tailed, bunny-furred, or a large bipedal sentient bunny. It seems there are a lot of rabbits hidden deep in the general source code. Note, reputable sources indicate that different basal morphologies may manifest in different fallen regions. Okay. Here's a haggling table. More random tables here. Here are 30 ultraviolet trade goods with a D30. You have your D50? Good. You have your D30? Cool. From alchemical lubricants to bone work to karma dust to joy worms to odd fruits to radial thermal fuel, soul stones, vampire wines. Oh, here we go. That's actually a thing in the game. Rich and ruby red, revitalizing, for they grow from soils rich soils infused with the flesh of creation. Vinters claim they are a valid blood substitute for many clads of abmortal. Distilled, they may heal. Okay, so it's not a wine. It is literally a vampire wine, I guess. I'm not quite sure. Here's some sample caravans. Here's our D20 table for our random patron who is financing our operation. Let's take a look at this. Let's see what we get here. Get our D20. 12. All right, we have a dog-headed mystic who wants to create the best museum, but they are part of a pharma petroleum cartel, and they are opposed by devolved demigodlings, and their weakness and oddity is that they require vital bodily fluid infusions. Yeah. But again, like I said before, like if you ever saw like Aeon Flux, like as a kid, as a TV show, right? Like this is some Aeon Flux stuff, right? Like weird, trippy art. It's not really entirely sure what anything is. It's very, strange and weird, and she catches flies in her eyelashes and that kind of stuff. Anyways, point is, as a kid, I didn't like this show. I thought it was weird. But who's really behind the patron of our dog-headed mystic bodily transfusion pharma petroleum cartel? Well, what they really are is they are a cover for the Royal Republican Imperial Society vampires. And what are they really hoping to benefit? Blue ocean disruptive commercial innovation. But if we can figure that out, we can get their additional help of attractive marketing influencers. What if the PCs figure out a trade route that they can keep rinse and repeat for profit? A milk run. Let them. They'll get bored soon enough, or they could set up a trade route with an NPC representative and probably additional fan shares. It's funny that they bring this up because when we played Scum and Villainy, the group needed money and they were kind of sick of doing crime because, you know, it was costly and expensive. They ended up basically doing a milk run. Like they just did a normal delivery, you know, like that wasn't crime. They were just like, hey, Derek, for our next score, can we just like get a regular transportation job and use our ship and our cargo hold and just transport some like, I don't know, hay or something or space hay. And we did it as a score. It was really funny because the group was just like, we just need some money. We don't need like a ton of money. We just need some money and it needs to be somewhat safe. And in theory, you can just keep repeating that. But it was like, you know, the idea is that eventually they'll get kind of bored for it. But anyways, yeah. Here are transportation vehicles and mounts. So this is what you can use to pull your caravan. You can pull your caravan with humans, slaves, porters, zombie porters, metal steeds, hand carts, bio beasts, auto golems, meat crawlers, the whole kit and caboodle. Here's some information about the undead, which you're using to carry your shit through the ultraviolet grasslands. And of course, badass motorcycles. And here's random tables of vehicle problems and vehicle troubles. And here's a bunch of general goods, which is, I'm sure, just a list of complete and total gibbly-gook, techno-babble, psychedelic, drug-induced nonsense. And sure enough, it is. Glow paint, heel machine, nasal filters, Omni battery, Ray-Ban navigators, UV lotion, synthetic blood, void thermos. Ooh, water purification pills. Okay, that's a thing. Toolkits, porter's pack, necromancer's gear, shaman's gear, veterinarian's gear, wizard tourist's chest, which of course contains an ambulatory golem chest, but also robes and pajamas. Here's our armor. We could have a shield, robes, boiled leather, cat armor, spectral combat suit, porcelain walker suit, full archaic armor, all the way up to 20. Weapons: bow, crossbow, porcelain prince pistol, violent cat rifle. Now, before we say, well, what the hell is a violent cat rifle? Oh, good, they don't explain it. All right, cool. Satrap radiant gun, Vom Slogger, Voice of Death, Black City Matter Disruptor. Nice. Got me one of them Black City Matter Disruptors. You could have a dagger flail, a dagger axe, a sword, a Vomish centaur flail, a 40-pound rare metal rod, more random tables of implants that, again, is just more gobbledygook. You know, Vom legs, hibernation glands, insolence engine. I mean, to me, this, and then, and here's 100 strange items. For example, it could be a chroma flashlight, sun charged, or it could be pickled kumquats. Okay. here are spells, which again, remember in Dying Earth genre, spells are all very, very, very specific, hyper niche, and have very very. That's what defines magic from D&D mostly, which is Oh, this was made long before ChatGPT, Beowulf. This literally came from someone else's mind. What is a spell? It is an old ritual. Is it an old ritual for jumpstarting an automaton or auto golem? Is it handed down sacred physics or an actual instructions for summoning powers from beyond the frontiers of reality? Few care. These spells leave a lot of the precise definitions up to you. They are listed with a generic name, some alternative names, description of their range, target, and duration. Casting a spell is normally not risky for someone who has some idea of what they're doing. Overcharging a spell, however, is risky. Possibly risky enough to detonate a wizard's head. One might offset some dangers with magic drugs, a sacrifice, a special item, or higher level. Hey, look, floating disc. So here's our Vancian type castings. Here's some rolls for biomagical corruption. More tables. Here's a bestiary. You have level, which is just an abstract level of its power. Life is its hit points. Morale is how likely it is to flee. Goes to 11. Roll 2d6. If the number's higher than the morale, it flees. Defense is to overcome attacks. Bonus is when it does something that it's good at. And damage is how much life its target loses when it's struck. So generically, here's every single creature here. A rat, has 4 hit points, 3 morale, and all the way up to a demiurge, a void crawler, the cave octopus, doing many, many points of damage. 2d20 plus d12 plus 18 points of damage for whatever reason. With 500 hit points and 666 hit points at level 17. Because why not? And then here's a bunch of creatures from the lands. The cat lord of the Violet City. Indeed, cats are the rulers of the Purple Land through their doting human servants. So apparently the cats, they're not like anthropomorphic cats. They're just cats. And we've got automatons, golems, humans, marmot folk, porcelain princes, radiation ghosts, steppe human, steppe nomads, steppe landers, and ultra human vomes. Here we go. Violent mechanisms, self-replicating synthetic organisms, or auto golems, or many of them hive-minded. I was wondering, they kept referring to vomes and vomish, so now we know what that means. Here's our pet table. It's a D50. And then here's just a bunch of other random tables for other creatures you might find along the way, other voyagers from the road, other gates, more just random tables. More random weather, random geography tables. Again, this is pretty useful, but, it's going to be kind of weird because it's coming from this land here. Like, for example, you're like, oh, cool, discovery table. And you're like, yes, it's a non-Euclidean hypomorphic time arc, which was made by the celestial cat and found by a charismatic revolutionary and is currently being used for biomodification, right? Like that's going to be of limited use to most people in most campaigns in most anything. Some stuff about languages, death. Throughout the text, the Voyager will have noticed that the totality of the sentient individual in the Rainbow Lands is divided into a trinity of body, soul, and personality, Ha, Ka, and Ba. This is largely lifted from a simplistic reading of the ancient Egyptian concepts of the person, such as in the coffin texts and the Book of the Dead. In a game, this trinity affects how the dead, the undead, and the resurrected behave. A creature killed by physical means becomes a classic corpse. A creature whose soul is destroyed leaves a perfect shell, easily turned into a flesh golem servitor, sometimes called a zombie. A creature whose personality is annihilated presents the most unusual situation. Their soul-body dyad remains physically alive but completely malleable. They are closest to the classical Haitian voodoo concept of a zombie, entities of human intelligence without volition, loyal to their master. And here we have a nice little table that breaks down what happens if you have all three, or one of the three, or two of the three. So, useful. So far, so simple. What happens when a player wants their characters returned from the dead? Without specifics, rituals such as Stoiviad's irreducible crystallization of the ego complex, the character as an individual disappears. Their personality dissipates into the cosmic consciousness, becoming part of the infinite tapestry of creation, returning like a messenger swallow to the all mind. The soul merges back into the all-fire of creation, preservation, destruction. Finally, their body decays into the all-green cycle of life, death, rebirth. Spells such as Animate Dead, Raise Dead, or the poetic supplication to the rotting god to turn back the wheel of love and death permanently alter the returned. How are they returned? Well, they roll a d8. Oh, or maybe it just stacks up. Some say the marks are gift, extending the life of the blue gods chosen. Wise folks who understand human nature, though, that these long decayed lives are but another curse. When a character of a PC would die, their player can either choose what happens or roll and let the Oracle of the Death Dice decide. Each result is only available once. Mark up any used options. If a result is unavailable, use the next lowest option. Hey, look, it's our first and only tip. Thanks, Shadram.
Shadram tipped $10. Tip: vote for a look at a classic adventure / module next time. Maybe one of your favorite dungeons to match the recent streams, and go into what makes it great.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, maybe we'll definitely do that. I will say, we definitely need to get some fun vibes in there. Thanks, Shadram. I appreciate it. We were well on our way to having our first 0-0 stream ever. Although again, technically this stream was paid for from a tip goal, so I don't really care. But yeah, we can roll, or we can choose. We would totally roll, right? Wouldn't you roll? All right, hold on a sec. All right, you've died. The Oracle, the power of the death dice compels you. Hold on a sec. I'm getting up. I'm loading up the. I don't care about you, Amflux. I'm loading up the poll. Here we go. All right. You die in your Ultraviolet game. Do you choose a default option? Roll the d20. All right. All right. So you die in your Ultraviolet game. Do you? 1. And remember, just type in chat a 1, a 2, or a 3 to make your vote.
Thaddeus tipped $20. I think Mythic Bastionland will be much more to your liking. I really enjoyed running a one-shot, and I think a campaign will be an awesome experience.
Awesome. Thank you, Thaddeus. Really, really appreciate that. Yeah, Mythic Bastionland. I mean, I kickstarted it. I don't know if it's publicly out yet, but I know that the PDF is available for backers. So I don't know if it's publicly available. But I missed, I actually sat down with him, and we had dinner at Gen Con, and he's a really cool guy. He had a lot of really cool, interesting thoughts, and he's got a cool podcast. So I'm really interested, but Electric Bastionland was not quite my style. So I'm really, really interesting to take a look at Mythic Bastionland and see if it grips me in a way that Electric Bastionland didn't quite do it. But I'm also a fan of Into the Odd in its way, in its way. All right. All right. Well, looks like no one's choosing the default option. Everybody wants to roll, so I'm going to roll the D20. All right, so we've died, and we can either choose what happens or roll and let the Oracle of the Death Dice decide. What? Okay. Got a 15. Character bruised bruiser. A character falls for a round. Something's broken in there, but not too badly. It still hurts. Character suffers a penalty to all rolls until they take a long rest, but also regains 1d20 life. And now they have a humorously large bruise. And we regained 16 life points. That's not bad. That's pretty good. All right. But then you die, and you decide to roll. And you get a 6. Stumpy 6. That wasn't good. That limb is supposed to be attached. Still, you have a few minutes before you bleed out. You gain D20. 1. You gain 1 temporary life. Also, limb missing. Roll D6. A 2. You're missing a leg. Sick. You have a few minutes to live while you bleed out from your severed leg. Fun times. And remember, once that comes up, it can never be rolled again. Or no. Oh, if the result is unavailable, use the next lowest option. I like what happens if you roll a 1. Cinematic super traumatic. That's a great phrase. Cinematic super traumatic. The character is dispatched in gory cinematic slow-mo. The battlefield falls silent in horror. Nearby allies lose 1d6 life from the trauma. All followers check morale. That's awesome. Vorpal decapitation. Snicker snack, their neck goes crack. Nearby creatures save or are blinded by the blood fountain. Oh, boy. And then we have a glossary because this game is full of made-up nonsense. Oh, well, now remember, we have a device with our character that can make Ka zombies. So now we know what that means, right? Yeah, classic living zombie. It is not undead, merely a body soul stripped of personality and ready for use by the animator. Creating a Ka zombie has nothing to do with necromancy, and the subsequent creature, though no longer animated by the wit of personality, nonetheless looks and functions as a human, albeit with zero drive, personality, or the ability to resist its master. Well, that's good to know. I wish I could vote for 2 and 3, probably in that order. Eat the leg. That's true. It is not How many sacks of food does my leg provide? It's not cannibalism if it already fell off. So your magic butler is a Ka zombie, right? I mean, yeah, I guess I would be a Ka zombie. I'm tended by a magical butler. Except I like to think that it was originally my butler, and then he died, and then he was too useful, so I just brought him back as a zombie just to keep him around. Electric Bastion Land is the game with like the it's like the game with like the weird like train station place and all that other weird stuff. And believe it or not, that's the end of the game. There's a very long index, which is probably for the best. Here's some fun art, like some old postcards. And here's some tables for rolling. Hyper procedural here, very procedural, right? I mean, look, this is the actual procedure of the game. This week's Caravan is traveling, and we are spending supplies, and we are then rolling on our supplies, and then after that we roll for our misfortune, and then after we roll for our misfortune we check our encounters, and then we rest, then we tally any extra days. Do we have 7 or more days tallied? Yes. Then repeat step 1 and spend supplies. No. Arrive at new destination? No. Then this journey leg is ended, and then here's the destination. We have to buy, we have to have an encounter, carousing checks, forage checks, treasure checks. Here's all the NPCs and creatures. This is literally every creature in the game, and you can just, this chart will let you roll any single creature in the game. Here's some more random tables of origins and what you see, and that's the final cover. This is quite possibly the most Ben game you've ever featured on this channel. Yes. So, not for me. Stylistically, not for me. The structure of the game, not for me. What I feel like is a very strong emphasis or focus on the author's, art and weird setting creation, not for me. Now, again, I do like some of the pieces of art. I'm just saying that as a genre, the weird Jack, Vance, dying Earth, kind of genre is not my thing. One of the problems I have with OSR games in general is like they've gotten too weird with a lot of the things that they do, and I'm just not a big fan of. I'm kind of trying to think of it. How can I put it in a way that makes sense? Games like this are, in my opinion, it's like how I've talked before on this channel about how like a lot of people really love random dungeon creators and random dungeon generators. And I do not. I don't like random dungeon generator tables. I don't like even the classic one from the D&D Dungeon Master Guide AD&D First Edition. I don't like them because I find that randomness tends to generate nonsense. And I think there's some people who really thrive in enjoying the chaos and nonsense and randomness of these really sort of like hyper procedural oracle filled games. And that is not me. A great example of this are the deep crawls systems. These are things like the Gardens of Yin or the Stygian Library. And I happen to know that Ben was a big fan of those, as was Smith. In fact, Smith took the concept of the deep crawl and basically created it in Northern Reaches Season 2. It was called The Ways. And it was a bunch of, like, there was this depth level and a chaos factor, and things would get weirder and weirder and weirder. And a lot of people really enjoyed it. Some people only played it because of the good experience. Rewards were kind of broken. You got a lot of experience. But a lot of people really, really enjoyed that, where it's just like, it's a series. I mean, again, depth crawls really are just a series of, of random procedural rooms that take you further and further into some sort of weird metaverse location. I can't stand that. It's just nothing that I am even remotely interested in. And I think that I don't know exactly who or what that is appealing to. That, like, I get why I get that they like it. I just can't think that why they do, because it's so foreign to me. I don't really quite understand it. Now, Skid, I think this could be fun in the same way a Fiasco one-shot stupidity. Agree, but the problem with this is not the problem. But I think the whole point of this game is that you are going to play it for many multiple sessions, right? You're going to go through the rigmarole of your caravan, and the procedural outcome is going to generate and random tables are going to generate new obscure challenges and they are going to, generate strange, unexpected events in the game, and you're going to delight in how the randomness is generating some kind of sense. But basically, this game, and again, it's a beloved, poem for a reason. So, let me see if I can find a large version of it. All right, so this to me, this game is the equivalent of this poem by Lewis Carroll. It's called The Jabberwocky. Okay? Many people are aware of this because, of course, it's famously where the Vorpal sword comes from. "'Twas brilling and the slithery toves did gyre and gimble in the wabe. All mimsy were the borogoves and the mome wraths outgrabe. Beware the jabberwock, my son, the jaws that bite, the claws that catch. Beware the jubjub bird and shun the fruminous bandersnatch. He took his vorpal sword in hand. Long time the Manamok's foe he sought. So he rested by the tum-tum tree and stood a while in thought. And as in uffish through he stood, the jabberwock with eyes of flame came whiffing through the tulgey wood and burbled as it came. 1, 2, 1, 2, and through the vorpal sword went snicker-snack. He left it for dead, and with its head he went galumphing back. And hast thou slain the jabberwock? Come to my arms, my beamish boy. O frabulous day, calhoo, calhay, he chortled in his joy. 'Twas brillig and the slithery toves did gyre and gimble in the wabe. All mimsy were the borogoves and the mome wraths outgrabe. It is a story, but it is nonsense. So yeah, and obviously it's a beloved children's poem, and Bandersnatch is in Pathfinder, and its weakness to Vorpal swords. It's all like, oh, look at that. And obviously Vorpal sword, Snicker Snack went the Vorpal sword, and that now we have a sword in D&D that can cut people's heads off. And if you didn't know that, by the way, that is the origin of the Vorpal sword. It is that poem by Lewis Carroll, because he cuts off the head of the Jabberwock with a Vorpal sword. But the Vorpal sword in the story Vorpal means nothing. It's literally a made up nonsense word. So yeah, some people read that and they go, that is true. That is true poetry. And I think it's just kind of nonsense. In any case, it's like that in that some people really enjoy, making up these random weird words and, getting really into like the weird, sort of depth type thing, kind of like the stuff that we were doing with like the Shell Father, it's fun, but I don't know that it can be, I don't know that I would be interested in like making a game out of it. But then there's also the stylistic thing, right? Which is this really psychedelic, hyper weird, and I'm just not a fan of weird. I'm trying to think of good examples of like weird stuff that people like, discordant stuff, disturbing, and disturbing is kind of the wrong word, but like I'll give you an example. It's not the same thing. I hate like Rick and Morty. I hate Rick and Morty. I hate growing up as a kid, I hated like Ren and Stimpy. I don't like strange, weird, uncomfortable fiction. And is how I would describe it. I don't want that kind of unsettling behavior, that unsettlingness to it. Maybe that's also why I don't like Call of Cthulhu in that regard. Like, I'm fine with things being unsettling because they're evil in this sense, but like just being like, oh, it's off. It's weird. Oh, the grass is made of arms and flesh. And it's like, it's so, I don't know. It's just not appealing to me. And then lastly, he talks about the importance to his art and his game of psychedelic heavy rock. I don't like psychedelic heavy rock. I don't like heavy rock. I really don't like rock. So, so I'm like 0% the target audience. Now, on the other hand, Ben loves those things. Ben loves like heavy metal, and he's like one of those people who, grew up going to weird shows from crazy metal bands, which, had all their like, influences from weird psychedelic surrealness. And I didn't, I liked Dave Matthews Band. So, it's like kind of night and day. This is not the Dave Matthews Band game, for sure. But yeah, so I don't like metal music. I mean, Oregon Trail was fun to play on the computer rather than go to a real class. I don't necessarily know that I want to play Caravans in the weird, grasslands. I mean, we made fun of it as in Traveler of being the space mortgages who are just traveling stuff through space. But well, Beowulf, I despise country music, so there's that. But I do not like rock or heavy rock either. And I'm not a metal guy, and I don't even know that I know the differences between them. Again, I like what most people would consider to be fairly soft music, like I like electric dance music. I like pop punk, emo. I like pop for the most part. Yeah, pop. Not Kenny G. Not like that type of stuff. I don't really like the super. I don't like ballady, romancy type music too much. But I like some guitar and stuff like that. But that being said, I did go to a Kenny G concert once with a girlfriend. So there is that. I don't really remember the story, or don't really remember the concert. It's a long story, and I'm not going to say it on air. But let's just say that we were alone at the top of a very empty stadium. We'll end there. Katy Perry. I've seen Katy Perry, in concert. I think her songs come on. I'll sing them. I know them. Do I think it's like great music? No, but it's catchy and fun to play, or catchy and fun to sing. Omniscient Toad says, there's a real line for me. I enjoy the weird of something like this, but I can't stand the Rick and Morty's. And again, I understand that there's a spectrum here. I'm not trying to say that like this is Rick and Morty. I'm just saying that for me, it falls into the, my sensitivity to this is pretty high. And so for me, it crosses into that sort of weird realm. Like, I remember there was that year, maybe 2 years, where like everybody was obsessed with Pickle Rick. I thought it was the dumbest thing ever. And while Ultraviolet Grasslands is not Pickle Rick, you wouldn't be surprised to see that there was a pickle, you find a living pickle person, like, I don't think that would feel out of place in that game. Yeah. So to me personally, it definitely feels more like a artistic expression rather than a real effort at making a dyed-in-the-wool game. But that's just my first take. That's my first look. That's my first impression. Because and which is fine. I mean, I think that there's a growing number of people who have become, more into the art. Again, I don't really like any of the Borg products. You like Planescape though, right? Yes, but I wouldn't say that it was like my favorite setting by any stretch of the imagination. It was, weird in a strange way, but at least it was grounded in the idea of this astral existence and these like planes which were shaped by thought. But, there was definitely a weirdness there, and goodness knows that the Tony D art, made it that kind of strangeness. But yeah, no, Planescape, while I think the premise was interesting, there were elements of that campaign setting that I found just didn't feel like D&D to me, which is one of the reasons why we never really played it. So, I definitely think there's a time and a place for it. But what's interesting is I wonder how many people have actually played this as a campaign. Like playing it as a one-shot, sure, but it's like the whole game is based around the idea of going on the voyage from the Violet City to the Black City through the Ultraviolet Grasslands and managing your caravan and doing all this other stuff, Hey-yo. Hey, GM Scott.
GM Scott tipped $25. Sorry, I showed up late. Sounds like it's not a game for me, but in a TLDR fashion, were there any interesting mechanics?
I mean, most of the mechanics were based off around, most of the mechanics were basically D20. I do like the procedural element. I could totally see stealing the caravan element system. Maybe not like the weird wonkiness, but if you wanted to have a game system or a thing that was really about like traveling overland and, sort of being like you could even steal that for like a space game where you're sort of, kind of a Firefly-esque game, maybe with less crime time and more like trying to make your way across this, desolate, because again, they said there's Marco Polo vibes, right? So it's like going from Europe to China is not just like a walk in the park, and it's going to be this kind of adventure-filled thing, but the potential for the rewards of it is so great that people are willing to make that risk. If you use that procedural element, I think that seemed very well designed to me. It felt like it had a really lot of interesting things. I love the idea of putting up this map and having the map be something that maybe actually do I have like a whole map? Yeah, I do. Hold on a second. So like this is the entire map of the Ultraviolet Grasslands, right? So starting from, well, I guess this is to the east, but starting from the Circle C and here at the edge of at the Violet City, and then making your way across the place, and you have all these different routes to take and decisions to make, and and again, each of these locations, right, remember, had a list of nearby geographies, because again, these are the main locations, but if you remember from our map key, does this have the map key? No, it doesn't have the map key. But like you might strike out from, let's say, the Potsherd Crater, and you might go into the Dark Hills and there's like a discovery nearby, or you might go down into the Shepherd Scrub, or maybe you're in the Potsherd Craters and you decide, like, are we going to go to the Last Sarai, or are we going to cut across the Shepherd Scrub and head over to the Porcelain Citadel so we can head down to the Trail of Vomish Dreams? And so, and the players have this map, and the game really encourages you to like make notes and draw on this. So this point crawl map thing here, I think is really, really, really cool. And, you say it's a sandbox railroad. I mean, a sandbox railroad is basically another definition of a dungeon. So, yeah, I mean, this is a point crawl map. I mean, it's basically a dungeon, right? There's different paths to get places. The different locations have different options and different things that are available there, different things to explore and discover. They have different costs. Remember, the things in the purple diamonds are the weeks to travel between these areas. Each location has its own random discovery chart. It has its own random weather table, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I think it's really, really cool that as you sort of, this is basically your whole campaign. If you're familiar with Band of Blades, is that what it's called? If you're familiar with Band of Blades, then you're aware that Band of Blades has its own kind of procedural element to the Blades in the Dark style game, which is very different from, something like Blades in the Dark. In Band of Blades, you are literally kind of playing through this already set in stone journey of the army retreating and trying to make their way back to Skyhold Keep, or something it's called, Skydagger Keep, which is where the campaign ends. You total up your point score and decide, did you win the campaign or not? So in a very real way, this game is about getting from the Violet City and making your way across this point crawl map and getting to the Black City. So yeah, here it is, by the way. So the purple circles are primary locations, destinations, and the chapter reference. The purple is travel time in weeks. But when you find discoveries, new routes, and travel times, you can add them to the map. So these are the things that the players will randomly generate from the tables and the discovery tables, and then you put them in your own circles, or sorry, your own diamonds, but these are number of days, not number of weeks. And then you can name your discoveries, draw on the map, expand it, make it your own. So, you have a way of sort of, breaking this stuff up. And so by the end of this map, if you printed this thing out, your players would have had all these cool little discoveries and things that you added, and some maybe things that you randomly generated, or things that, you just came up with along the way because it fits the fiction and you're following through with it. That I find very compelling. And to be honest with you, I kind of love the idea of that, because I love the idea of an RPG campaign that has a clearly defined ending that isn't, we reached 20th level. But also like not in now you say, well, actual plays, like not actual adventure paths have a defined ending, but you don't necessarily know what that defined ending is when the game begins, right? Your characters aren't first level going, all right, everybody. I mean, to be fair, that is kind of a cool idea. I've talked about that before, right? Where you have a campaign, let's say Pathfinder 2, and you say, okay, you guys are level 1 characters. We have this cool background story about why you are going to try to overthrow the Dark Emperor. The Dark Emperor, in 2 years' time, will have amassed enough energy to, control the multiverse. You have 2 years, starting today, at which point the Emperor wins. Good luck. And it's like the party they have 2 years. They can go adventure, they can go gain treasure, they can go gain levels, they could go power. They could try to become super powerful and beat him at level 15. They could try to level up all the way to level 25, if such a thing exists in your game, and go beat him and have it be like a face roll encounter. But you have 2 years, right, to get it done. And so you're very aware of this. At the very beginning of the game, this is the objective. Now, what's between here and there? Who knows? And maybe things will get crazy and maybe things will get off kilter. But in this game, you start at the Violet City and you give the players this entire map, this very, 5-page long map. And principally your goal is to get to the Black City. Now, what's going to be involved along the way? You're not sure. How and why and what's going to happen? Unknown, because there's a lot of random tables between then and there. But I like that. I like this sort of very structured element to the game. Sam says, it reminds me of a macro version of the game, that game you talk about where you started with a scene of the battle and then had to work your way to it and make it make sense. Yeah, I mean, we kind of talked about that with like Avatar, actually. Avatar Legends is an example of that, where everybody chooses their options and it's kind of like simultaneous, and then you kind of work backwards and say, okay, so this is what the round of combat looked like, but we really don't know what the round of combat looked like until we were done with it. This could be interesting if it was a play-by-post. It'd be interesting. I mean, there's definitely, because there's fun decisions to be made, right? So like if you're in the Ivory Plain, as a group, you might have to decide, do we want to travel northwest and head to the Dark Light Passage? Or do we want to follow the road south across the Ryegrass Heights and try to cross the River Woe at Deadbridge? And maybe that's got some cool elements to it. Maybe there's some interesting things in Deadbridge. And of course, as you play the game and you build up your own internalized fiction, these things are going to have more and more and more context. So this part of the game, I think, sounds awesome. I think this sounds amazing. Now, all the weird, living tree, meat tree places and stuff, I mean, I could take that or leave that. But I think this part's really, really awesome. As for the characters themselves, I mean, it's pretty basic stuff. I mean, in that regards, it's like D&D. Right, you've got 6 stats, which are basically strength, accent, whiz, charisma. You've got 3 levels of skill, 3 levels of proficiency. You add your stat, you add your proficiency level to get your melee, your range, your psychomagic, your old tech. You have hit points, you have an armor class, and you can carry a certain number of items, and you can acquire a certain number of traits. And if you have too many traits, you start to get penalties to your dice rolls. So, what's up, Kyle? Good to see you. Take care, Shadram. Thanks for stopping by. Appreciate you. Yeah, I mean, again, I mean, and there's also obviously a very significant, art element to the game, and I definitely appreciate that, even if I don't necessarily like most of the art. But lots of random tables too. But again, those random tables for some people are like super fun, and I've noticed that people assume that I really like. I always talk about randomness, but where I differ from like what some people might think of as with randomness is like Powered by the Apocalypse. I love that on a 6-, remember on a 6- you get to make a GM move. And we've had this conversation before, Ben and I, and Ben talks about how he dislikes that on a 6-, it's just like the GM gets to make a move and they get to decide basically what happens. And Ben likes to use that opportunity to roll on an oracle table, which is totally fine. Like I actually think that's kind of a really kind of cool way to sort of remove the GM's bias. The difference is I don't mind GM bias. I don't like GM bias in terms of deciding outcomes. I don't want to be the person who decides this is what's going to happen. But I do like the ability to say, I have ideas and I think they're cool. And there's things I want to see and there's questions I want to ask. But rather than just imposing my will on the game, Powered by the Apocalypse says, you'll have your opportunity when the players roll a 6-, and they will. But up until that point, keep your mouth shut. But then when a 6- is rolled, this is your opportunity, not to roll on some random table, but to insert your bias, to insert your preferences and your way that you want to shape the story. And I enjoy that because that's me feeling like I'm actually putting my personal touch into the game. Not to make light of it, but it's like if you're just randomly rolling for everything, where is the touch of me in that process? And that's where I kind of shy away from the sort of oracle tables, especially mid-session. Even the books that I really like, and I talk about all the time on this channel, like Tome of Adventure Design. I don't use this at the table. I use this as sort of a idea generator. I frequently ignore the results that I don't like because I'm not doing this as sort of a way to avoid bias. I'm doing this as just a way to spark the imagination and give me an idea that I might not have otherwise come about. So that's where I find the sort of the distinction between what I like is randomness, right? I like randomness of outcome. I don't necessarily like randomness of destination or randomness of situation or randomness of event process. I want to have that ability to influence the game, but I don't want to do it capriciously and at a whim. I know some GMs like that, right? They like having control. They like having so much control that they actually resent Powered by the Apocalypse games because they say, I don't like that the game handcuffs me and says, you cannot influence the game until they roll a 6-. But see, I enjoy that because otherwise I would feel like I would have too much power. And then GM's like, well, you have to balance it. And I'm like, I don't want to balance it. I want to play by the rules of the game and not just decide on a whim. And this is again my unique take on the game and how I particularly like to play role-playing games. Because I don't think I necessarily know better than the players or than even the sort of coherent fiction that we're telling. But when my time does come up, then I want to be able to add that to the game. And especially because, like I said, there's always questions that I want to know the answers to. And rather than just force that to make that happen, if you watched the Root RPG game, it was completely prepless and things came out of nowhere. And during the one session, the group of rebels that the Vagabond PCs had been sent to deal with turned out to be led by Bob's character's brother. And that happened as a result of a GM move. I made that GM move because I wanted to see what Bob would do with his PC. I didn't know Bob's PC. And this was an opportunity for me to see what Bob thought about his PC. Was his PC the type of person who was going to say, no, that's my brother, I can't, or I don't care that that's my brother, I will? I didn't know the answer to that. And better yet than that, Bob didn't know the answer to that. So we all got to find out together, but I wanted to see that happen. And rather than just force that to be the thing that would happen, I had to play the game just like everybody else. And it had to become a thing that emerged naturally from the fiction. And it was a spur of the moment type decision. I really dislike going into, in fact, I try to avoid it, going into a session being like, okay, how am I going to, this sounds very stressful to me. I've said this before. One of the reasons I really get stressed out about playing adventure paths is because I'm like, oh, I've read the book. I know that the PCs have to go to here. How do I make that happen without actually like, while still giving them choices to go places? It's very frustrating. It's very stressful. So I find it to be much easier to sort of go with the flow and go into a session not knowing where the destination is going to end up, but being ready that when the thing comes through, being ready to boom, drop a cool move, drop a cool new question or a new situation, and get to see how that plays out. So, Ultraviolet Grasslands. There's something there. It's really interesting. I mean, I think this is going to be a very polarizing game. I think it's going to be a very polarizing opinion. I think some people are going to really dig the weird psychedelic, heavy rock, science fantasy, dying earth vibe. And then there's people like me who won't. The system itself, super micro light. The character structures, for sure. The Caravan and Caravan procedures, pretty detailed. Way more complicated than the characters. And again, some people are going to really like that. Like my group was really, my group would totally, there's a guy on our Patreon Discord, Rick Sherman, loves Traveler, and he plays Traveler like it's, The Expanse, or he plays Traveler like it's the, Aliens movie, right? Sci-fi, military sci-fi, kind of politics, marine drops, combat tactics, cool laser sport space rifles, drop ships, military maneuvers, right? Starship Troopers type movie. When we were going to play Traveler, not that we were really going to play it, but when we talked about playing Traveler, we talked about being like an intergalactic love boat transporting passengers and interesting cargo around the inner sphere or whatever. Very different game. So for some people, one of that idea of having a caravan system is horrible, and for other people, it's great. It's fantastic. GM Scott says, by the way, it looks like Exalted Funeral is running a 20% off sale until tomorrow. So there you go. You're interested in saving $25. I think the PDF was $25 or something like that. But anyways, some people will really dig that. Some people will really dig the randomness. Some people will really dig the randomness, the style, the art. And again, those touchstones of psychedelic, heavy rock, Marco Polo, and Oregon Trail, are not going to necessarily appeal to everybody. But if it appeals to you, I think there is something to be said there. So yeah, I would say for me personally, the setting is like a D. The character system is like a C. The procedural cargo caravan system is like an A. I really think that's really neat. And I really, really do dig that point crawl map and the point crawl system. And again, while it's really weird and full of crazy, strange, out there, weird, glass-headed horse mount type things with flying pyramids made of jello or whatever, I do think that the breakdown of like here, each territory has its own unique table for weather, for misfortunes, for local discoveries that the party can go and explore to potentially earn experience points or treasure or loot as they make their way across the Ultraviolet Grasslands to the Black City. I think that's a really cool system. And again, fundamentally, as a group, you understand what the goal of your campaign is. Now, it's not like if you don't reach the Black City, you'll be dead. Or if you don't make it to the Black City, the world will fall. No, it's not an existential threat. It's not an existential threat. But you do have that goal as a group. Nor is, I suppose you could, but at a fundamental level, like you're not just going to abandon your caravan and go, become full-time adventurers. Somebody financed this. You have this debt that you have to pay off. So like there's this pressure to keep going. And I think that's really cool. And I think that's really a neat way to play the game. And more important than anything, it really gives players a very solid sense of just how far we are through this campaign. When the group makes it to, what was the name of that one location I saw? When the group makes it to like the moon facing I think like the first great checkpoint is south-facing passage, because this seems to be like a major crossroads, and that's location number 11. And then right around location number 20 or 24, you have the Cage Run. Or no, sorry, here it is. This was the one I was 16, moon-facing ford. Literally all the paths go through this ford. So like you will definitely pass through this location. Once you're through this location, you're like, okay, the campaign's about halfway over. And you can physically track that on the map. And I cannot stress this enough. These kind of maps are amazing artifacts. Let me tell you a fun story that just happened like a couple weeks ago. We're over at Smith's house. We were getting ready to start talking about our next campaign. And for some odd reason, DTX got brought up, Keep on the Borderlands. We started talking about the map and the dungeon. And Bob started trying to explain an element of the dungeon. And Smith went, oh, you mean like right here? And he turned around because Bob, and I think a few other people, had mapped the dungeon while we were going through it. And of course, it ended up being multiple pieces of graph paper, which we ended up taping together to kind of create this kind of rough collage of the map. And then when we were done with the campaign, Smith taped it up to his wall in his basement, and it's still hanging there. It's been hanging there for like the last 2 years. And it was great because it was like you were just able to point to it on the wall, and it was like this great artifact. It was this great memento of that campaign. And a map like this, whether it's digital or physical, would just be a fantastic memento of that kind of campaign, because you're going to have all sorts of little doodles and squiggles and all of your hand-drawn pins and destinations and side routes. And I think that's really cool. So I do think that that's a really nice touch as well. All right, Norm's picked it up. Sweet. It's great to have stakes that aren't existential and are intensely personal. Right. And, even in the sense of intensely personal, it could just be, I'm trying to get paid, and, like these characters are fundamentally, they may have personal reasons for wanting to cross to go to the Black City, but at a certain level, you're there to just try to make some money, which I think is really, really cool and interesting. All right. Well, that's the Ultraviolet Grasslands. That's my first look. Again, not going to be for everybody, but it's definitely doing some interesting things. Luka Rejec has a bunch of other games that are doing some crazy stuff apparently as well too. So it's definitely a style of game which has become much more popular, I'd say, in the last 4 to 5 years, sort of driven by the Mork Borg. Well, not driven by, but like Mork Borg sort of highlights that, where you have these very like art house style projects that are as much about the vibes and the style as it is the substance. This is obviously a very rules light game, but it has a very strong identity of what it is. And it's not defined by the mechanics. It's more defined by the ideas, the visual imagery, the situations that you find yourself in. And that's very different from, what we get with other games, right? So Beowulf, I think, summed it up very nicely there. I like that this exists for others. So while it is not something that I am probably super interested in playing, would I play it? Sure. But like, I would never be able to like enjoy it the way that other people would be able to enjoy it. And I'm quite afraid that after a while, I'd probably get pretty bored with my character, because unless like some of these crazy mutations were like really off the chains, because I would just be very like, I like a certain amount of progression in my characters and not just like, oh, you got another skill. I think that's really boring. Yeah, Norms, you're completely respected. In fact, Mark Rose, we talked about that when we talked about Mark Rosewater. He said it is better to, have a game that some people say is a 9 or a 10 out of 10, and other people are like, yuck, I hate this, 0 out of 10, than to try to have a game that's just a 6 or a 7. Because at the end of the day, 6 or 7s, they'll take it or leave it. And it's better to have people that are just super passionate about your game rather than having this sort of lukewarm milquetoast appeal to everyone product. And I think we kind of know the games that I'm talking about when I talk about those games. And Elia says, I'd still rather play this than Monster Hearts. See, there you go. No, they know what you're about. GM Scott says, I'm not interested in playing or running it, but the map and the rules are interesting enough that I picked it up on sale. Yeah, this is like, you remember when we did the Wild Sea, and I know Beowulf will remember, I said, I think the Wild Sea rules were very interesting, and I think there was a lot of interesting concept, but the world was just too weird for me. Giant ships flying on top of, or not flying, but cutting their way with chainsaws on top of a gigantic tree ocean. It's fine, but it's just a little too weird for me. I was like, why can't it just be can't it just be fantasy Waterworld? Can't it just be fantasy Waterworld? I'd play that, you know. And Beowulf was like, yes, exactly. And I was like, yeah, can't it just be? Let it be fantasy Waterworld. I'd be about that. So, electric or ultraviolet grasslands. If it was called, you know, I don't know, the unending grasslands or something like that, you know. Then it's like, and it was like more of a traditional fantasy game with, you know, weird magic stuff, but, you know, not weird magic, but with magical stuff and fantastic elements, but not with like living toaster ovens and zombies that are also your butlers and all this other stuff. If it was, you know, the never ending grasslands or the unending grasslands or something like that, it was more of a traditional fantasy game. And it was still this idea of a dangerous caravan setting out for a far distant location. Then I think that'd be pretty cool, you know. Yes, he's still waiting for you to run Fantasy Waterworld for me. That's after I create my intense naval ship sailing simulation game. Would I play it with my friends? Sure. Would I recommend it to my group? Nope. Yes, exactly. Give it a coat of Ryutama paint and it would sell boatloads. Right. So, you know, sometimes it's about like, you know, where we're going, and sometimes it's about like, what are we doing? And sometimes it's about like, who are we? And other times it's a question of like, why are we doing this? And I think that all of those different questions are important, and different RPGs try to ask them and answer them in different percentages. And so I think it's this is definitely a game that I think is really leaning into the look how weird and cool and strange this world is, the visuals, the vibes, that's sick, you know, like a tree made a forest made of meat, and I don't know, a mechanical tree that self-lubricates itself with mechanical oil sap or something like that. Like, it's really leaning into these kind of like strong, you know, psychedelic rock band album cover vibes. And I just, that's not me. So, you know me, I like Larry Elmore, you know, I like Jeff Easley. So like I'm a basic, what can I say? I'm a basic fantasy bitch. You know, so I like Alan, Alan Lee and, you know, and John Howe, for Lord of the Rings illustrations, you know. So let's look at a good piece of John Howe art. Like, you know, now we're talking. See, I'm down with this. This is A+ in my book. You know. So all I got to say is, you know, yes, please. Let's do it. I'm in. Gandalf v. Balrog, down. I'm in. So, you know, that's what I'm saying. I'm the pumpkin spice latte equivalent of RPGs, and especially when it comes to fantasy. And, you know, these weird, trippy, out there RPGs with their strange, hyper realistic, strange weirdness. They just go over my head. Yeah, I just want my dwarves and my elves, and yeah, I guess I'm a basic bitch. This is why D&D is king. I'm not sure why D&D is king, to be honest with you. I mean, aside from its name recognition. So, all right, Dr. Waits, what's up? Well, what a journey. All right, well. Thanks everybody for hanging out tonight. Relatively shorter stream, and that it's only going to be like 2.5 hours. But I really want to thank everybody for coming out today and checking out our first look. I know we've been focusing a lot on dungeons, and some people like that, and some people don't like that. Still trying to figure out what we're going to do as a channel for making money. Right now, obviously, the Patreon is the best way to support us. If you sign up for that, patreon.com/night/call. But hopefully with this stream, we will have successfully become an affiliate with Twitch. And then if you would be so gracious to do so, once we become an affiliate, if you have an Amazon Prime subscription, you get a free Twitch Prime sub every month. And that means once a month, you can head over to our twitch.tv/Knights of Last Call channel and go ahead and drop that in. Doesn't cost you any money. Costs Jeff Bezos money. He's got to give me $2. So that way, it doesn't cost you anything. It's $2 for me. But hey, if a couple hundred people do that, it's like $400 for me, $500 for me. Should just about cover my monthly insurance premium once I have to buy my own insurance. All right, Moonlit Mongrel's hopping off, and he's going to get, or I'm going to get their Prime, no questions asked. That's fantastic. So that is going to do it for me. So, yeah, I mean, to be an affiliate in Twitch, the qualifications are actually quite low. You have to have an average of 3 viewers. That's considered to be like enough popularity that you make affiliate. So obviously we've crushed that, with like 30 viewers or something like that on average, 25 viewers. They're like, you need to stream 7 days. I was like, oh, that's auto done. That's done in less than 2 weeks. And then they're like, you need to stream for 8 hours. And it was like, okay, that's like 2 or 3 streams for us. So we were able to crush that pretty quickly. Well, the sad thing is, Norms, most people can't and won't and will never get that. That's what's really sad. Not like sad and like, oh, that's pathetic. But I mean, imagine if I was me and I just started streaming on Twitch. None of you would be watching me, right? Now, you all have come to really, hopefully, find the information and the content and the conversations that we have here valuable. You might find my perspective and my insight valuable. But you wouldn't, for all you know, there's somebody on Twitch streaming right now who, is giving better information than me. But, the game is kind of rigged, and it's really hard to find people. So it's tough, So I really respect people who are out there trying to do the hustle. And again, I get asked all the time, especially at Gen Con and Origins, I'll wear my Knights of Last Call shirt, and that's where I'm recognized. That's where my people are. But I'll have people come up to me who go, oh, Derek, Knights of Last Call. They're not a patron or anything like that, but they know the channel, or at least they know the name. And they'll come over and they'll talk, and we'll chat things up. And a lot of times they ask me the same question. They'll say, like, I'd love to do that. I blah, blah, blah. How do I do it? How do I start a channel? How do I get engaged? And I go, I don't know. I really don't know. You got to get lucky, I guess. I mean, I had so many things going for my, in my favor. It was during the middle of COVID. I already had a functioning photography studio, so I knew everything about lights and cameras and, video settings and audio settings. Obviously, I have 30 plus years, 35 years or whatever of D&D experience now, of RPG experience. So, I mean, I had a lot of advantages. And a lot of people don't have those advantages, so it's tough. Payable says, I just love how you and I can agree on so much and yet disagree on so much. It makes listening to you engaging in chat interesting. It's the best of both worlds. Right. I mean, if we only agreed or we only disagreed, it would probably be a very contentious or overly, sycophantic relationship. But it's a nice mixture. I mean, I don't want everybody to agree with me. In fact, I want you to have your own opinion, and I want you to tell me to get bent. And some of people's favorite games are not my favorite games, and that's cool. That's why there's so many different games. That's why it's so great. All right, folks, I'm going to wrap it up because, I'm still kind of wonky from our Monday stream where I went to bed at 8 in the morning. I woke up at like 3 in the afternoon. And so today I'm still trying to get back into something resembling a regular schedule. But we're going to do that again. That was really popular, and we had a lot of people come in, and that was a lot of fun. So get bent, Derek. That's the best thing I could possibly hear. Did you see that Ben posted at UVG cover today? Coincidence? No, James Scott. This stream happened because Ben dropped a $100 something tip a couple weeks ago and said, "Hey, Ultraviolet Grasslands first look." And I think he even said, "I think you'll hate it, but it has some interesting ideas." And I think that's exactly what Ben said. And as usually, Ben is right? So he was corrected again. All right, everybody, I'm gonna head out. Thanks so much. We'll see you next time on Knights of Last Call. Peace.